The New Hope for America Foundation presents A Real Job Solution. This is part 2 entitled The Solution. Let's briefly review the job loss problem. In the past 40 years, our country has gone from creating wealth to consuming wealth. We have gone from the wealthiest nation to the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world. This is the result of outsourcing our manufacturing with free trade policies. In the past, our manufacturing payroll has provided the economic fuel to produce a vibrant economy. Now, with the loss of a major portion of our manufacturing payroll, it has become necessary for our government to fund our economy with QE 1, 2, 3, etc., giving us a government-funded economy. This has produced an anemic recovery and is driving our federal deficit out of control. Since the QEs are now providing a significant portion of the economic fuel for our economy, it's important to take a minute and understand their significance. The QE term stands for quantitative easing, which is a deceitful way of saying government deficit spending. The recent QE's borrowing rate has been at $85 billion per month. That's a $1 trillion increase in our national debt per year. It's outrageous and unsustainable. However, it is necessary because we have lost the financial input of a large part of our manufacturing payroll dollars. Our country is now in a dangerous, precarious balance. Our current, out-of-control deficit spending is funding our economy and must be reduced. The dilemma is that the proposed cuts in deficit spending will reduce tax revenues and jobs and further depress our government-funded economy. We are in debt, a debt in a death spiral, and just as in that catastrophic downward spin that pilots fear, it seems there is no way out. Fortunately, there is a solution. It is to go back to a manufacturing-based economy, where the economic fuel is provided by a manufacturing payroll. Government would then resume the passive role of collecting taxes rather than funding our economy, as it has to today. The debt spiral could be broken. Excessive federal spending could then be reduced without the economy collapsing further. So, how do we get there? To answer that question, we need to step back and review why we lost so much of our manufacturing. Our free trade policies over the last 40 years have opened the door to extremely low-cost Asian imports. 30 to 40 years ago, U.S. manufacturers were supplying U.S. retailers. Then Asian manufacturers, with their extremely low labor cost, entered our market. Even today, a U.S. product can cost 3 to 4 times more than a comparable product from China. With this huge price difference, the U.S. manufacturers will not receive orders for their products. This has forced U.S. manufacturers to take their jobs to China or go out of business. In either case, millions of U.S. jobs were eliminated. The solution is to apply the method Japan used to restore their manufacturing following World War II. They required all imported foreign goods to flow through a Japanese manufacturer producing the same type of product. Using this technique, Japan restored their manufacturing, and this enabled them to become the number 2 economic power in the world. Now, let's change the slide to our country. As you can see, this puts our manufacturers back in the game with imported products flowing through U.S. manufacturers. Whoa, you can't do that! Yes, we can. Our Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 states, Congress shall have the right to regulate commerce with foreign nations. We do have constitutional authority to control our imports. Manufacturing opponents will say that you are driving up consumer costs by adding U.S. manufacturers into the distribution chain. That's true, but the additional costs will be minimized due to free market competition among U.S. manufacturers. Consumers may balk at any price increase, but the question we need to ask ourselves is, would we rather have consumer goods at the absolute lowest possible price or have a strong economy with decent paying jobs, and most importantly, be able to preserve the freedom of our country? It's one or the other. You can't have it both ways. Our solution is based on free market principles. There would be no regulation or interference with the pricing of products. With our solution, we support Milton Friedman's premise that in order to have a free market, you must let competition in the marketplace determine the price of a product. With a real job solution, U.S. manufacturers compete with U.S. manufacturers, and U.S. retailers compete with U.S. retailers, with no government interference on pricing of their products. This solves the problem of how to put U.S. manufacturers back in the game. Now, how do we bring our jobs back? Let's use refrigerators as an example. The percentages and time periods we present are arbitrary and are used only for illustration. We start with 60% of our refrigerator market being imported. At the end of a 5-year period, we reduce the allowed imports by 10% or down to 50% of refrigerators sold. The percent of U.S.-made units would then increase from 40% to 50%. At the end of another 5-year period, we reduce the imports by another 10%. The U.S. manufacturer's market share increases to 60%. This reduction occurs every 5 years with all imported products until we achieve a fair and balanced trade among the nations. We would now have reversed the U.S. manufacturing losses and are creating U.S. manufacturing jobs. As you can see, this market transition is relatively soft. It is unlike tariffs that are abrupt and can cause trade wars. This is an important point because our solution doesn't require tariffs that the protectionists claim are needed to restore manufacturing to the U.S. So what could happen if we implemented the real job solution? We would restore the U.S. manufacturing base and be on our way to 25 million new American jobs. Our economy would boom, our freedom would be protected, federal deficits could be greatly reduced and or eliminated, our middle class restored, and that's not all. Tariffs are a major impediment to free markets. New tariffs would not be needed, and all current tariffs would be eliminated. Incidentally, for a tariff solution to work, it would require that the price of imported goods be raised comparable to the price of U.S.-made goods. That would really be unacceptable to U.S. consumers. Tariffs are not a free market solution since they artificially control the price of products. In contrast, our real job solution is a free market solution. There are other important benefits from the real job solution that solve major problems we face. One is that imported counterfeit and dangerous products are reduced to near zero or are eliminated. For example, we know of the problems caused by counterfeit DVDs, poison in pet foods, and defective wallboard. And the most serious of these problems is the discovery of counterfeited parts in the over 4 million parts imported by our military each year. This is an open door for sabotage. Let me show you how these problems are eliminated. Remember I said it was important that foreign manufacturers can export to the U.S. only through a U.S. manufacturer that makes the same type of products. The reason for this is the U.S. manufacturer is able to qualify their foreign suppliers and then thoroughly inspect the imported parts. For example, a Chinese manufacturer counterfeiting DVDs could sell only to a U.S. manufacturer of DVDs. That won't happen. A Chinese steel manufacturer would have to dump their steel on a U.S. steel manufacturer. That won't happen either. Foreign suppliers would first be qualified by the importing U.S. manufacturer. Then, all the imported products would be thoroughly inspected by the U.S. manufacturer, eliminating defective, counterfeit, and sabotaged parts. Also, these inspections highlight and solve another very serious national security problem. Currently, we are able to inspect only a very small percentage of our imports. With a real job solution, this percentage could be reversed. Each U.S. manufacturer would inspect their own imported goods. U.S. Customs then becomes support and oversight. Now I would like to address the issue of balancing our federal budget as it relates to our trade deficit. There is a lot of interest in Congress to balance our federal budget, but no one seems to address the fact that we can't balance the budget until we have balanced trade. Because of free trade, our government has to use QEs to replace the billions of trade deficit dollars that are flowing out of our country every year. This situation is like trying to carry water in a bucket with a hole in it. We also need to address the China issue since it is a key factor in solving our job loss problem. Our severe trade deficit with China has placed both countries in a precarious position. Our loss of manufacturing payroll has forced us to fund our economy with QEs, which threaten the value of the US dollar. The falling dollar then places the value of China's over $1 trillion investment in U.S. treasuries in jeopardy. The solution is simply to restore our manufacturing. This will eliminate the need for QEs and shore up our dollar. This will then restore China's faith in our dollar and reduce China's urgent desire to replace the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. The pieces fit together. It's a win-win for both countries. Now let's take a moment and summarize the solution. Our country is locked in a debt spiral as a result of the outsourcing of our manufacturing. We have replaced the real economic fuel of manufacturing payroll with government deficit spending. For example, the QEs. We now have a government-funded economy. We are in a catch-22 where the much-needed cuts in federal spending may actually increase our debt. This would happen if the reduction in income taxes exceeded the reduction in federal spending. In any event, the cuts in spending will not bring a corresponding expected reduction in debt. The only real way to get out of the debt spiral is to restore our manufacturing base. This will restore our economy and jobs. We then could make the needed spending cuts without hurting our economy. It's time to address these issues. The Real Job Solution presents an effective pro-growth plan to restore the greatness of America. The New Hope for America Foundation has proposed a new two-part trade policy to bring about the restoration of our manufacturing. It is our hope that these concepts will help to open up discussion on this important issue. The first part puts manufacturing back in the game. Imported products can be brought into the U.S. market only through a U.S. manufacturer making similar type products. The second part creates manufacturing jobs. The percentage of imports for each class of products will be frozen at the current import levels on a per-company basis, and then that percentage will be systematically reduced until overall balanced trade is achieved. Thank you for watching our two-part Real Job Solution to help restore America's greatness.